I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
One of the challenges of long-time relationship is, when do you prioritize your soul and yourself and your own individual destiny, and when do you prioritize the partnership? And I usually prioritized the partnership, and this was where I learned how to prioritize my own soul's growth.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Listenership continues to increase, so thank you for your support. If you haven't already done so and you would like to support us, please subscribe to our show on iTunes. It's free to do, and it makes a huge difference for us, so thank you. Now on to our guest. Robin Rinaldi is the author of the critically acclaimed and very controversial novel, The Wild Oats Project, One Woman's Midlife Quest for Passion at Any Cost. The book chronicles Robin's story of exploring non-monogamy several years into an otherwise monogamous marriage. Robin is a longtime editor and journalist, and she has written for the New York Times, The Atlantic, O Magazine, and many others. And she is also, I am so pleased to say, the managing editor for our very own Together magazine, which is the sister magazine to this podcast. And if you haven't seen that, you can find it at our website, together.guide. On a recent trip to Los Angeles, I got to sit down with Robin in her very beautiful writing room to discuss monogamy, polyamory, regret, and yes, personal growth. Robin's story is a fascinating one, and in this episode, we go far beyond her book and tread into the ever-changing landscape of sexual morality. It was a lot of fun to record this episode, and I think you'll enjoy it. We're lucky to have Robin here at Together, and after this interview, I think you'll understand why. So with that, let's go to Robin Rinaldi. You're an old friend of Aubrey's, my fiance, and she wrote a book, and she told me that I had to hear about your book. It's called The Wild Oats Project. And I haven't read the whole thing. I know a little bit about it, and I've read excerpts, which really got my juices flowing, if that's the right phrase for it.
Yeah.
But can you describe the book?
Yeah, it's a memoir, and it basically covers a couple of years in my early 40s when I was living in San Francisco, married, when my husband and I decided to open up our marriage and try an open marriage. That's basically the elevator pitch.
Whose idea was it to open the marriage?
Mine, for sure. It was not a mutual idea, and we didn't go into it with mutual enthusiasm, let's say. That's one big lesson I learned about open marriage. We'll just start right out with that.
Yeah.
People always ask me, what did you learn about doing an open marriage? And one thing I learned for sure is that the people I know who do open marriages, because I know a few still who do them, when one person is kind of cajoling the other into it, or one person feels pressured to do it for some reason, then it's trouble. I also saw that the people it was working for tended to be people who started out the relationship that way. They have philosophical qualms about monogamy. They weren't long-time monogamous hitting a midlife crisis who then said, I believe in open marriage. Usually something really big is going on in the marriage when that happens. I won't say that doesn't work, and some couples don't weather that, but it's much more difficult. I will say that I've known other couples who had more alignment than my husband and I did about their enthusiasm for open marriage. In our case, he had done more non-monogamy and that kind of thing in his youth, which is practically speaking, the better time, I think, to do stuff like that. Most people tend to do that in their youth and then move into monogamy as they mature. And I was just the opposite. I had so much monogamy and so much kind of staying in the straight and narrow in my 20s and 30s that when I hit my 40s, it kind of exploded.
Oh, and that's when you started it? Was in your 40s?
Yes. We were together 18 years, monogamous, and married for 8 of those years when we started the open marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm thinking it probably is fair to say that it was challenges existing in the marriage.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there was a midlife crisis going on for me, and even more importantly than that, there was a struggle over whether to have children. And that had been going on for several years and was a real dilemma. And it finally ended when my husband decided to get a vasectomy. And then I was facing the fact that I was never going to have children or experience motherhood. And that's when I started feeling, looking forward to my deathbed and thinking, okay, I can give this up, but I've already given like sexual adventure up, and now I'm giving this up. And then it got to that point in the relationship where the one person feels, I'm giving too much up and I have to stop now. And now I need this other thing. And for me, that other thing was sexual liberation and sexual adventure. And that's when I went to him and said, okay, like if I'm not going to be a mother, I need to have this other thing. And then
Why are those on the same plane?
I got pushed into this corner mentally. I'm not saying anyone pushed me into this corner, but I felt myself in this corner mentally where I said, I can go to my grave without one of these. Because I really was willing, I thought I was anyway. I mean, that's my honest guess, is that I was willing to give up. Obviously, if I was going to have a child at that point in a monogamous relationship, I was willing to give up the sexual adventure. And then when that didn't happen, I abandoned myself to, I just threw out all the rules, and I found myself kind of in this primal, instinctual way going for sex.
I'm really curious about the concept of sexual adventure. As a man, and this is something that I talk about with my male friends quite a lot, the sexual appetite can never, I think for most men, be satisfied. It's physically impossible. It may be satisfied for 5 or 10 minutes or a half a day after the sexual, ejaculation or a really good sex,
Right.
but it comes back with a fury.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong for men who want to pursue trying to satisfy their sexual appetite or exploring all of their sexual boundaries. It's just that it's a constant wellspring of desire. And so if you were trying to approach sexual exploration from a perspective of, well, I'll do it and then I'll be done, I suspect it couldn't have been done. I suspect you couldn't have checked that box. Is it the same for you?
No, it's not the same for me. I don't only mean desire, horniness, wanting to have sex in a real basic way. Seeing someone good looking and wanting to go to bed with them, like in that basic daily way that I think you're talking about with male desire. What I'm talking about is having sexual experiences that are somewhat permanent, even though they are permanent in memory. They're permanent in that they expand my experience and give me practice in certain ways of having sex or ways of communicating during sex that then you integrate and have going forward. So for example, here's something I cover in the book. Here's one example of what I'm talking about. I had always had a problem kind of letting loose in bed, just verbally, dirty talk, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people do.
A lot of people do.
And I could not, no matter how much I tried, and I tried, get over that in my marriage. and there's theories about this. I've read lots of elegant theories about why this might be. They're Freudian. Some of them are Freudian. Some of them are more modern. But I, for whatever reason, that was my own inhibition. I own that was my inhibition. But I could not get over it. The minute I started sleeping with other people, I got over it in about 2 seconds. Now, I feel now when I have sex, I can either do that, talk dirty, or be quiet, or talk in a sweet, loving, non-dirty way. The range has expanded because I've kind of gone out and experimented with that in ways that I could not figure out how to do in my marriage. So I'm talking about that kind of sexual liberation, not just adding, numbers to my list of lovers.
Fast forwarding the book, I think the result is that pursuing an open marriage resulted in ending your marriage.
Yes, ultimately it did.
And so then you have to compare, in some sense, was it worth it to check the box and be sexually liberated? The sacrifice was the marriage.
Yes. For me, all I can say looking back is that it had the whole experience had the feeling of it didn't really have the feeling of a conscious choice. It had the feeling of this has to this is what has to happen. And if the marriage survives it, then that will be good. That will be nice, and we will try to make that happen. And if it doesn't, that's all right. I'm willing to risk it. Sometimes I think in relationship, we each get to the point, one of us or both of us gets to the point where, for our own soul's sake, for our own soul's growth, we have to do something. And it doesn't have to be sexual at all. It could be a career move. It could be we have to go to another city or country and live for a while. It could be that one of us has to convert to this new religion. We just, in our soul, we have to. Our soul is trying to grow in a certain way. And sometimes the marriage can accommodate that, and sometimes it can't. And that's one of the huge challenges of long-time relationship is, when do you prioritize your soul and yourself and your own individual destiny, and when do you prioritize the partnership? And I usually, historically, prioritized the partnership. And this was where I hit the wall, where I learned how to prioritize my own soul's growth.
It must have been so challenging because you've read all the research. And in the literature on relationship success, I've seen over and over an indication that working through the deepest, most rooted, fundamental challenges for a human being and then sharing that process is what creates intimacy with a partner. And you can't get that intimacy in any other way except by doing that and time combined. Mm-hmm. And so when a couple is confronted with an extraordinary challenge like this, where one person has to make a decision to be who they're growing to be, they're looking at the alternative, which is, but also I could work through this and develop unimaginable depth with my partner. And that's the decision people always face when they come up against the end of a possible relationship. Do I work through this and create depth, or do I move forward and create growth for myself in another way? And everybody wants to know how to make that decision. Do you have some clues?
The only thing I can say about that is that, like you said, I read a ton of books. I went to lots of therapy, not just about this. I'm just one of these people that believes in therapy, and I had a difficult childhood, so I'd been in therapy a lot. And I'm a real believer in self-help and working through it, and sharing and talking and journaling and all of that. So I had done a lot of that work, and that was my go-to, the kind of stuff you were just talking about, what the experts say and what has been found to be a wise way, to work through it. And I hit the point where I had to put that aside. What is the wise way? What is the blueprint? What is the Buddhist way? And listen to my body. It's a very scary, non-Judeo-Christian thing to say. It's a, and it's a scary thing to say. We don't normally think that our bodies have morality, that our bodies have their own order or structure, that if we let our bodies decide, we might end up robbing banks, and there might end up being fires and gun violence everywhere. And I'm not even saying that might be true. You do have to watch how much and how deeply you follow your bodily desires on a daily basis. But for this period of my life, as a person who hadn't done that, that was my way through. Listen to my body and let my body teach me what I need to know in this next phase. Go with the body and then gather up the lessons later. Now here's an important point. I think someone who has followed their body a lot, for example, some 25-year-old guy or girl who's always sleeping around because it just feels good, and is always drinking a lot because it just feels good. Their lesson might be to learn how to rein in the body, how to get more into their head, how to philosophize a little more, or sit and meditate and detach from those desires. I think the path of growth is often the place we haven't been in the past. And so the place I hadn't been in my past is letting my body lead. And that's why it was growthful for me at that point. I don't mean it to be a blanket statement where let's all start listening to our bodies and all the time, every day. But I will say that I think our bodies contain wisdom that we can't get anywhere else.
Well, let's talk about love.
Okay.
Since we're already in the philosophical realm anyway.
Yeah.
We've had many non-monogamists on the show.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them didn't tell us about that before they got there. So we've ended up with lots of surprises, which has been really fun.
There's more than you think.
There really are. And we've had non-monogamists of all stripes because there are so many configurations in that world. Some of them have been in the category where they believe that physical interaction should be the limit to the non-monogamy. And we've had, roughly speaking, another category which is where they believe that love is the purpose of non-monogamy. And that there is an unlimited, their philosophy, if I can paraphrase it, is that there's an unlimited amount of love in the world. It's not a finite resource, and that the human being can expand spiritually, a human can expand spiritually when they realize that love is infinite. And that a way to do that is to bring more romantic love into their lives. Mm-hmm. And so these people are in love with more than one person simultaneously and healthfully because they're communicating it. Did you go there?
I definitely experienced being in love with more than one person at a time. It's possible. Did I experience it in this healthy, communicative, conscious way that some of these folks that you've talked to previously have? I don't think so. I don't think I was inside that kind of a structure where the people around me were operating, where everything was talked about like that, and it just the structure wasn't set up for that. But I think it's possible. I definitely think it's possible to love more than one person at a time and to love them and be in love with them in different ways. I will say that I think what these people are talking about, as far as lots of romantic relationships, lots of love relationships.
Or more than one.
Or more than one. Even two is a lot. And when you think of what it takes to really have one conscious, committed, loving relationship, and then you ask yourself what it would take to have two or three. I mean, a lot of us saw that series, Big Love. That guy was, that husband with I think he had three or four, committed love-based marriages with these different women. It takes a lot. And it it's fascinating. I think it's where a certain percent of the population is absolutely going there. It we're coming to the point where monogamy will gradually become more of a chosen conscious lifestyle and not just something is handed down from us from our church and our parents and what we're supposed to be do.
Well, you said to me once when we were discussing the new column on the magazine that you're editing, the poly advice for the monogamous column, you said that it's your view, though you yourself are a monogamist now, it's your view that polyamory or non-monogamous relationships are on the cutting edge of relationship development for people. Did I say that right? I might have.
I don't I don't know if I said it in exactly those words. I don't think that just I think there are two cutting edges of relationship development, and I think polyamorous who do it consciously, the way you're talking about, are they seem more cutting edge because it's not the norm. They definitely are moving into relationship territory, conscious polyamory that most of us just haven't read about, heard about, or done in our lives. If we have been quote unquote non-monogamous, it's in a much more old-fashioned way where it's just adultery or affairs or emotional affairs or just dating a lot of people at once and not telling them all about it. So they are definitely the combination of multiple partners and like brutal honesty is taking relationships to a territory that is unknown at this point, and you can definitely call it cutting edge. The other thing that's happening is that I think there's a cutting edge happening in monogamy. And this is the stuff Esther Perel talks about, and it's the stuff David Schnarch talks about in The Passionate Marriage. It's kind of what you alluded to at the beginning when you talked about how when you can stay together and when a couple can stay together and monogamous through their deepest challenges, great intimacy is born. And so I think both methods, both modes of relationship are becoming more conscious, more freely chosen, more. We're just learning more about them because in the past, 100 years ago, say, if you were monogamous, you're just monogamous because that's the norm. And if you are quote unquote non-monogamous, you're probably not doing it honestly and with a lot of communication. So both modes are now becoming more conscious.
And is that why you were so enthusiastic about the idea of the poly advice column?
Yeah, I think because the poly people who are out there really dealing on a daily basis with one of the main emotions monogamists get to avoid, jealousy and that deep insecurity that comes when you're afraid your partner might like somebody better than you. I mean, that is a primal deep emotion that monogamy is really convenient at just most of the time pushing it away. You just build a big wall around your relationship and then you don't normally have to feel that. The fact that they're out there doing that is it's like even if you'd never want to be polyamorous or never want to do it again, I think I'm going to be absolutely happy being monogamous the rest of my life. I'm super interested in what they have to say about how they handle that and what that looks like and what effect that does have on their committed, relationship or relationships. They're doing things with an intensity level that most monogamists probably don't experience. Some things. I mean, monogamists are doing things on a certain level that maybe polyamorous don't experience.
Right. Yeah. One thing that I heard you say before is that polyamorous, along lines of what you've just said, the polyamorous, the non-monogamous community has to work so hard to communicate everything that's happening for them in the relationship dynamic in a way that most monogamists these days have not consciously tackled. That they have a lot to teach about how to go about communicating what's going on for each partner in a relationship. And
Yeah.
and that is a fundamental skill set that the monogamous community can learn from and then chart its own course with.
Right. And use it for the purposes of monogamy. I mean, if that's what you consciously want to do, and a lot of us do, by the way. I mean, monogamy is still very much what the majority of people, I think, try to do. There's something about it that has a continual allure.
More than just cultural?
I think so. I do. I think it's more than just cultural. I think, who knows? I'm really only talking for myself when I say this, but I've looked deep down, and I do feel like I'm a monogamist at heart, and I do feel it's more than cultural. I who knows? Maybe there's temperaments of people. Maybe it depends on the zodiac sign you are. I'm a Taurus. Taurus people like comfort and to have a great nest and a really stable home. I mean, maybe Sagittarius people not so much. I really don't know. I can't say, but my guess is that the cultural imperative toward monogamy, let's not underestimate it. It's huge. But I think there's an even deeper urge toward it, and I think it probably maybe has to do with biology.
Right. I've been thinking about a concept lately that everybody has something weird about them. In fact, I just wrote an article about it. I don't know if you saw it.
I didn't read it yet, but I think I saw the title of it.
I call it Claim You're Queer.
Yeah. It looks like it's going to be fun to read.
The idea is everybody wants something weird, whether, it doesn't have to be sexual, but sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And the whole point is drop the shame around it. You're human.
Right.
And in fact, take it a step further and share it with your partner, because that creates the intimacy that we've been talking about. But it's so hard for people to take that first step to start exploring. And I think it's usually because we have these unconscious beliefs that we're going to be outcast or ashamed, which is roughly the same thing. Mm-hmm. If we articulate what we think we might want, even if we've never quite said it out loud to ourselves. And you had to overcome that. Mm-hmm. And having gone through it and now come out the other end of a very deep exploration, do you have any advice for the old you or for people who might just be starting to have an inkling that there's something they need to share but are desperately terrified to do so?
If it's at all possible, even if it's in the realm of your imagination, that you could possibly begin to share any of your kind of deep desires, things you've never experienced that you've always longed to with your current partner, try it. I mean, you probably, for most of us anyway, unless it's something really super illegal or really violent or, that for most of us, your fears about completely being shamed or outcast are probably a little blown up in your mind.
Well, what about your family? I mean, were they just, what did they, did you tell them? What did they say?
Yeah. Well, while it was happening, I didn't go into too much detail. I gave them the basic outline of what was happening. Now, of course, they know, a lot more because some of them read the book. I kind of have a liberal family that has some outlaws in it to begin with. So they're not like the most straight and narrow people. And so they were basically okay with it to varying degrees.
Were you rejected by anyone?
No one in my family, no. Some friends had a problem with it. especially married friends, especially friends who were, you've got those couple friends. Like, it's not so much that you are individual friends, but you and your partner as a couple are friends with them as a couple.
Yeah.
We as a couple fit into a little mini society of couples. And I think it's always threatening to that group of people and hurtful, as well. And it's a loss for them when one of those couples destabilizes. So I understand that. But yes, I was definitely judged by some people. Um, and certainly once I wrote the book and went into this in great, honest detail, then you allow the whole internet to come in and judge you. So, yeah.
How do you hold the fact that some people have judged you harshly or rejected you?
Well, I mean, I think um, if you're a writer of any kind, whether it's a journalist or a novelist or a memoirist or whatever, um, or if you put yourself out there to the public in any way, if you're a chef, if you're a if you've built a business that you or a product, I mean, these days we are all judged. Just post anything on Facebook. Post your political views. Post a picture of your kid or your dog. Believe me, you're being judged.
For a public figure, you know you're going to be judged.
Hmm.
Or if you allow yourself to be on social media, you know there's going to be, to whatever degree people review what you've said or done, there's going to be a reaction. But for people who consider themselves private, but have a scary thing that they know that their family or friends are going to find out about, and it feels like it's a true thing that if they don't share, they're limiting their true selves in some way.
Hmm.
What do they have to know
Yeah,
to
that's a
move
good
forward?
question. Listen, the good thing is you can always find a community of people or at least one or two good friends who are going to be your safe harbor, no matter what your kink is, no matter what your secret is. There are people like you. That's another good thing to remember. You're not that special.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why I was able to write this book
yeah.
and get sexual and get really honest and talk about some of my moral failings and the way I lived unconventionally for a year and the things I did that were completely not uh, you know, kosher as far as, a moral blueprint goes, the times I lied, the times I got violent. I mean, the only reason I was able to do that is because I really don't think I'm special.
Yeah,
I really don't think anything I've talked about is something that millions of other people haven't experienced.
it's a great perspective. I've also always loved the phrase, another word for freedom is nothing left to hide.
Oh, that's a good one.
A twist on the famous lyric.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder, though, there's a line that I put in that Claim You're Queer article that I keep thinking about, and I just sort of tossed it in, but now I'm wondering if it's insensitive. I'm curious about your perspective on this. I said essentially, healthy couples can communicate thoroughly. I've seen that over and over on this podcast. If you've got something fundamental to your way of being and you can't communicate it to your partner, they might not be the right partner anyway. And it's a strong statement. I believe it as I'm saying it now, but it is somewhat harsh.
I
Is there a
agree.
more nuanced?
No, I think I agree. And the word is fundamental. Not that you have to tell them every single thing that runs through your mind or even every secret you have. It's okay to have secrets. It's very European. It's very stylish to have a few secrets. But personally, I agree with you. I think that um, if you can't and you have to hide something really fundamental to your being to stay in your relationship, there's probably someone who's a better match for you out there.
Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah.
It's a little harsh, but I don't really. I think most people would agree with that.
Well, approaching wrapping up the show, were there any critical lessons that you learned in that whole process that that are fundamental to who you are now?
Yes, uh, I guess the basic one I learned is I was kind of idealistic and naive in how much I expected a marriage to provide both security and passion and adventure, I think. I I really feel, not that I'm saying a marriage can't do that. I think it's a great thing to strive for. But I think my expectations were just too high. I think I was looking outside of myself, same old story, for my husband, my marriage to provide my inner sense of security and to provide enough passion and adventure in my life. And now that I've kind of went on this adventure and created passion for myself in a kind of a chaotic way, and then came back around to having a more secure, kind of stable, conventional life, I really feel like I integrated both of those into myself, that my security now comes from me, and my sense of safety comes from inside myself, not from my partner or my relationship, and that my passion also comes from me. It doesn't come from my partner, and it doesn't come necessarily from some outer experience that I'm trying to bring in. There are many ways to experience passion, and there are many ways to feel more secure and safe within yourself than always expecting it to come from your relationship. So I just think the main lesson I learned was how high my expectations were.
It almost sounds like you're saying, if I knew then what I know now, I could have stayed with him, but I could never have learned what I know now except by leaving him.
Exactly. Well, and it's not if I knew then what I know now. I did know it. I read it. I saw it in print. I heard other people saying it. I knew it, but I didn't live it. And that those are two kinds of lessons. Those are two kinds of experiences. Some lessons we have to live. We can't just read about or know from other people who have lived them and are now passing them down to us.
It's like
I mean, sometimes we can, but certain ones, and those are different for everyone. We just have to go out and gather up our own lessons.
Is this like the body-mind distinction again? You
Yeah.
can't just intellectualize some concept, they
Yeah.
need to be embodied.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly how it was for me.
Mm. And so, no regret.
I have certain regrets about certain aspects of my behavior for sure. Times when I was dishonest, for example, that's a regret. And I've, there there have been apologies about that and amends and then that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say I'm completely, regret free. I don't. It's not my goal to get through life completely regret free. I expect to make some mistakes, and I expect to, have some bad feelings about those mistakes, rightfully so. But do I, regret the big overall arching decision to do what I did and take this huge unconventional kind of wild chaotic course in midlife? No, I don't, because I just don't think there was any other way through it for me.
And is your relationship with your ex-husband?
It's friendly. We're friends now. And yeah, I mean, I admire couples, ex-couples who remain friends, and that was a goal of mine, and I think it's the same for him. And he's in a wonderful, new relationship with somebody who's, I think, really suited to him, and so I guess all's well that ends well.
What an inspiring story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so honest and so clear. It's a real pleasure to talk to you about these topics. You have such depth.
Thanks for having me.
My total pleasure. Okay, so I like to end shows with a quick game of this or that.
Okay, what's that?
So the way this or that works is I give you a this or that, and you say which one you prefer.
Okay.
Tuna fish sandwich or sushi?
Oh, that's hard.
Good.
Oh my gosh. Tuna fish sandwich.
Wow. I don't really.
Yeah, really.
You love them.
I really love. I mean, that is my favorite. I'm such a fan of tuna fish sandwiches. You don't even know.
Mayo, pickles, toast.
Toast is great.
Toast is great.
Yeah. Simple though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you butter your toast?
No.
That's a key.
Well, I'm gonna try.
You got to butter your toast and then put your tuna.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yes, it'll be amazing.
I'll
Okay.
try it.
Well, this is topical because of what's happening in the movie world.
Okay.
Superman or Batman?
Oh, I'll take Batman. I just like Batman.
It's that darkness.
And I grew up. I mean, this is gonna date me for sure, but I grew up with Batman on TV every afternoon.
Yeah.
In like the early 70s, I think it was. So I just
Bang, pow.
Plus, Batman's partner is Robin, and I've always had, that's my name. So I just like Batman.
Yeah, Batman. Okay. Okay. Now, second to last question.
Okay.
Enlightenment or $1 billion free and clear?
$1 billion free and clear.
Wow, you're so clean.
Oh my God. I mean, do you know the good you could do? Who's really going to benefit from me becoming enlightened? But $1 billion? Number one, ISIS is gone from the face of the earth.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? With $1 billion?
Well,
I mean, if
no,
that's true...
probably not $1 billion, but I'd put up a good fight.
Yeah.
Secondly, lots of people in my immediate family and circle of friends are going to be very happy.
Yes.
And yeah, there's a lot of good causes. And then, some left over for me. I'm a Taurus. And
which all
I
sounds
take
like
the
it's
billion.
kind of like trying to make you, it would make you happy to do all those things.
It would absolutely make
but
me
wouldn't
happy.
enlightenment be the ultimate?
Listen, here, I have a better deal. You know we're going to become enlightened the minute we die, right?
Right, yeah.
So take the $1 billion now and then get enlightened.
That's what the famous quote is about that from the guru, whose name I can never remember. He says, if somebody offers you $1 billion, enlightenment or $1 million, take the $1 million, because if you're enlightened, there's nobody there.
Exactly.
Okay. And the last question. If you had to either live forever, infinity, or die in the next 5 minutes, what would it be?
Wow. I'll take infinity. And I normally wouldn't. I think that's overrated, by the way. Every vampire book that's ever come out shows you how bad it is to live for infinity and how boring it gets. But I can't die in the next 5 minutes. It's just I don't have a will made yet, and I just can't do that. So there's a whole box of journals in that next room that needs to be burned, and I'm just not ready. So I just have to choose infinity.
I wonder if in 1 billion years you're going to be regretting that.
I'm sure I would.
Type me a text message. I'll be curious. All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show. It was so great to have you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for our interview with Robin Rinaldi, folks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Robin, you can find her at her website, which is robinrinaldi.com. That's ROBINRINALDI.com. And you'll find links there to the Wild Oats Project, which is the book that we discussed, and many of her other writings. You can also check out what she's been editing for us at together.guide by going to our website, together.guide/magazine. If you liked what you heard on the show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a huge difference when you do that. It's free to do, and we very much appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us via one of our social platforms. Once again, our website is www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are both at together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. Our producer is Charlene Goto. Our web designer is Courtney Munna. Our art director and my one and only is Aubrey Pick. She's already in bed, and I can't wait to join her. Thanks once again to my guest, Robin Rinaldi. Robin, Next time you're up here, dinner is on me because I have a cupboard stocked with tuna fish. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.